you do belong and you do matter. So,
Mm.
imposter syndrome is something I talk about a lot because some people have heard of it, a lot of people haven't, but everyone has experienced it.
In this episode of the What Made You podcast, we'll be interviewing someone with a not so traditional career path to get a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering and then took some twists and turns that led him to start a podcast and open a non-profit organization that is designed to empower black and brown people to engage in the field of STEM. The three takeaways that I got from Paul is that he never let an opportunity or somebody pass him by. When you don't have goals, you never reach anything. And being approachable breaks down a lot of perceived barriers. Normally, you'll call these types of people the yes people. But Paul was the only person that was being the yes person because he found that it allowed him to experience some form of growth. And I believe these are the same takeaways that you will come out of when listening to Paul's phenomenal story. And it should be encouraging to those that love to take the lead and start things. Yo, what is going on, guys? It is the What Made You podcast, and today I have the man, the myth, the legend, Paul Faronbi. And let me give a little introduction here. First of all, he is a man of God, a husband, mentor, career coach. Paul has a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering with several years of corporate work experience where he uses his talents of engineering and crossing it with his gift of training and leadership. These attributes have lifted Paul to the top as an expert and leader in the industry of business and food manufacturing. He has developed himself to become a certified Maxwell leadership coach and speaker. His passion for leadership success leads him to guide the youth and young adults to be inspired and experience the ever-evolving field of STEM. Not only is Paul the president of nonprofit NALA STEM, but he's also an entrepreneur and personal brand himself. So, using his leadership skills, speaking ability, and vast knowledge of career, Paul launched a podcast called the Paul Podcast that highlights individuals in the workplace from all walks of life. So, without further introduction, Paul Faronbi. What's
That
going
has
on, Paul?
got to be the best introduction I've ever had. You make me sound really good. I don't know if I'm that good. I don't know if I'm an expert about anything. I think I'm still learning, but I'm better than where I started. That's for sure.
Everybody, right? Everybody is. Hey, if you don't mind, if you could give like a 2 to 5 minute snippet of here's where you started, like say birth, to where you are currently at.
Yeah, for sure. So I started with my mom. I think we all did. But I was born in Lagos, Nigeria. So I'm Nigerian. So I actually have dual citizenship, but started off Nigerian. My family moved to the States, United States, when I was 4 years old, and grew up in St. Louis. I lived in St. Louis up until when I was 15. Moved to Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska. My dad changed jobs, and so the whole family moved out there. Lived in Nebraska, so I had 1 year of high school in St. Louis. So all the St. Louis people out there went to Fort Sumont South. That's where I went. And in Omaha, I went to 3 years of high school in Omaha, and then from there I went to college in Iowa, studied chemical engineering at Iowa State University. Cyclones go State. And after, so I did some internships. I did research, really all 4 years while I was in undergrad, and tried to decide between if I was going to stay in research or go into more working in the corporate world or manufacturing. I decided I wanted to work in manufacturing, and I worked for General Mills for actually before that I worked for Conagra for a short stint, about 2.5 months in Marshall, Missouri, and that's a story in itself. But from there, I went to General Mills. I worked there for 2 years in Albuquerque, New Mexico. From there, I came back to St. Louis, worked at Purina for 4 years, and now I'm at Henkel, Henkel Corporation. So they're a chemical company, so they make soaps and laundry detergent and a lot of other laundry stuff like dryer sheets, fabric softener, all that stuff. So that's really my career background. But like you mentioned, man of God, so grew up going to Church on the Rock, been got accepted Jesus when I was 11. I think 11, 9 or 11. So it's been a while. We've all had our ups and downs, but that was the first time I did it. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell, I guess. There's some other stuff, but we can start with that.
Excellent, excellent. No, that's awesome, awesome stuff. So you have the podcast, you have all this other stuff, the entrepreneurial spirit. I want to get there, but
Yeah.
if you don't mind, main source of income. So how did you even get there? Like this manufacturing, this chemical engineering, is it a Nigerian thing? Is it a hey, I'm going to college, I'm going to learn this thing guaranteed, or was it somebody that impressed you to be like, hey, this engineering route's the way to go?
Yeah. So believe it or not, chemical engineering was a backup plan for me. I fully thought I was going to go to school and become a doctor, a medical doctor. And so, yeah, and so a lot of Nigerians, I think it's just kind of a rite of passage. It's a running joke that you're either a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or a disappointment. But I mean, it's not nearly like that now. My parents were a bit of a supportive of whatever I did, but you'll find a lot of Nigerians are in those career fields. I mean, my dad's an engineer as well. But when I was going to college, I thought I was going to be a doctor. But as I was applying to different schools, trying to figure out my major, I kept saying pre-med. And I think it was actually University of Missouri. They were telling me, like, pre-med is not a major. You need to declare an actual major. And so we're talking with them and my dad. At first, I thought, okay, biology or chemistry. That's what people typically do for med school. I mean, you can do anything. I know people have done music or theater. You just need the right classes and take the MCAT. You're good. But I thought, okay, if for whatever reason I do all 4 years and I was not able to get into med school or change my mind, would I want to be a biologist or a chemist? And the answer for me was no, that's not something I wanted to be. And so I've always loved math and science, and I've loved chemistry, which is not typical of most engineers. Yes, most engineers, they hate chemistry. So they always look at chemical engineers and say, what do you guys do? But so I ended up choosing chemical engineering. I got involved in research actually the summer before my freshman year through a program that's called SPEED. They don't have it anymore, but a summer program for enhancing engineering development. So I did that 8 weeks, got to be on campus at Iowa State University, got paired up with a faculty and grad students doing real research. And that really got me on the path towards focus on chemical engineering.
So it actually all started in college. So this had nothing to do with like the upbringing per se. It just
Not
you got in
necessarily.
college and you kind of started just figuring it out along
Yeah,
the way. Because
because
it sounds like you already kind of had like, okay, I sort of know what I want to do. College is almost a guarantee, sounds
yeah,
like.
yeah,
And then you got there and you're just like, okay, I'm here, now what?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I'll just kind of figure it out along the way. Did a little bit of a struggle, yet stayed in the same lane, which is pretty cool because a lot of people change
Mhm.
their major several times.
Yeah, yeah.
But it sounds
Average
like you
like
kind of
4
had
or
like
5
one or
times.
two that you chose. Yeah,
Yeah, I really actually never changed
awesome.
my. I really never changed
Oh,
my
really?
major. It was just I came into chemical engineering and I thought I was gonna be go like pre med and go into med school after, and I stayed in chemical engineering and I had biomedical engineering as a minor. So I liked the medical field and stuff. But
Okay. So, how'd you get your first job?
my first
Like,
job, I so like first job out of school or just like first job in
yeah.
general.
How ooh, did it lead into?
Kind of not directly.
Okay. What was the source? Like, okay, what'd you say that first place was?
So first job out of school would have been at Conagra Brands.
Okay.
So like it's in food. Like for majority of my career is in food. So for people listening or watching, the the stuff that they make that you probably are most accustomed to are like the Hunt's ketchup or Hunt's tomato sauce. They also do the healthy choice meals, Crunch and Munch. They do a lot of different food stuff. But I really got it from a career fair at my school. So Iowa State has a really strong engineering career services as far as making sure that you're prepped for your resume. They have interview prep, and they have a large career fair. As far as while I was going there, it's actually the largest engineering career fair in the country. So they had over 300 companies on that came on site to Iowa State on a during the week. I think it's usually on a Tuesday. There's a fall and spring. The fall one was the large one, like over 300 companies, and so
Wow.
basically, yeah, like a typical career fair, you get in line, you talk with people. They tell you to apply online. You apply online. But yeah, that was really
How
how
many did you go to? I gotta know. I gotta know. How many did you go to?
I went to
How many
every
career
one.
fairs?
Every I went to all of them. So like even from my freshman year, because they do it like if you want internships or full time, and so I did it for my freshman year in fall of 2012. I didn't get anything the first couple of years, but I made connections with some of the people there. The other thing is that a lot of companies they will bring back alumni, so they're Iowa State students, whether they're still in the Iowa area or they came from somewhere else to recruit people, either for internships or full time opportunities.
Gotcha. So I want to try to start transitioning into
Yeah.
this small business
Yeah.
entrepreneurial thing, this leadership even.
Mhm.
I noticed while going through your little about me infogram page, it looked like you were in a rotational program at two
Yes.
places. Am I correct at that?
It
And
was one place, but I just did a lot of. I did. I had four different rotations in that one place.
okay, is that where you started noticing this? Did they force you into a leadership space?
A little bit, not so. Like the rotational program is really an opportunity for engineers or whatever. I know they have it rotational programs in a lot of different disciplines,
Mhm.
and so it's just an opportunity to learn a lot about the business and the company relatively quickly. So it's pretty structured as far as like for mine was more engineer focused, so doing like process engineering, so learning about how the process works, how to make it more efficient, maintenance, which is just making sure everything is maintained the proper way. Reliability is really more long term strategic um, planning for how we're doing stuff. It was more larger scale than just a specific area. But the
Okay.
leadership side was indirect only in the sense that while I was in this, it's like an early career program, that they sent out an email because they were trying to do more stuff to do professional development for this group.
Mhm.
About 30 of us in like early career. And so they just sent an email out like who's interested in being on this committee to do like monthly calls on different topics. And so I raised my hand or sent the email, virtually raised my hand. And there's six of us that we were chosen for this, and we got paired up with the coordinator for all the early career people. And so we would meet, I think, at least once a month, maybe multiple times a month, to just talk about what we could do, what we could plan, who would want to come speak. So at least on the career side, that's where it started as far as really leading that community. And then we also helped plan a conference specifically for us, where we all went to Minneapolis.
Oh, that's cool. Very cool. Because I see this transition, and I also see it whenever we first met. Just the ability to pull people in, just be engaging and welcoming. I think it's what my wife would say. Is like
Yeah,
you are welcoming. There's
thanks.
not a. It's a gift, not necessarily something a talent per se. It's like something you just kind of embody. And so I know Church on the Rock does a lot of the Maxwell training. I've been noticing this. Is it because of that church that whenever you came back, that you decided, hey, this leadership and the stuff I'm doing now is kind of like together, and I really enjoy being around people. I love teams. Could you kind of walk me through this inspiration? Because you don't just like jump on. Something had to happen. What was that? Like that door opened, you went through. Where was that at?
Yeah. So the inspiration, like, to do this stuff with Incredible or leadership in general, or
The if it's together, let me know. Yeah, that'd be good. Love to hear
yeah, if it's a little, I think one kind of leads into the other. So like the leadership
it. Okay.
in general, ever since I was pretty young, like even in early in high school, a lot of my either cell group leaders or high school leaders in church, which it wasn't at Church in Rock, it was a church in Omaha. I guess they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself as far as being a leader. And I was always a reluctant leader, as far as not that I didn't think I was being a good example, or I could. It was just so I was often the person that was the most reliable to do things, whether it was different projects or just getting people together, or like you were talking about, just bringing people in. Like we all have like a friend group that we say we're going to do this activity, and everyone's like, "Yeah, we're going to do it," and then no one plans it. Or you have that one friend that's like, "Okay, we're going to do this at this time. Here are the details." And I was that friend to say like, "These are the details. You guys just have to show up," type of thing. So really from in high school and then in college, that kind of continued being involved in student organizations and even starting a student
Mm.
organization while I was in college based on research. But the stuff in Incredible, honestly, it came out of a lot of stuff that I was doing on the not, I'll say nonprofit side. Before it was a nonprofit, so on the volunteer side, I've
Okay.
always been really passionate about helping students, especially STEM students, just because I'm in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And then
Hmm.
a lot of it, I was involved in a program while I was in college called LSTAM, Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. So it's a grant from the National Science Foundation, and really is dedicated to helping people who are underrepresented. So people who are either historically excluded, so you're blacks, Hispanics, women that don't have as many of them in STEM. And the whole
Right.
idea or goal is to get them to finish their bachelor's degrees, go to grad school, get their PhDs, and it's all centered around research because PhDs is all research. So they really want to get
Right.
you involved in research early on in undergrad, so you just kind of continue. So I found out about that program. I actually was already, like I mentioned, I was already doing research before I even started my freshman year. So the first time I found out about it, I was like, well, I don't really need this. I'm already doing research. Like, but then, yeah. So I think I just got an email. Somehow I was on their list, probably because I was black. They had all the minorities on their list, and they were just being honest. And I was involved in some other organizations that were in like underrepresented diversity, black engineers. So they probably got my email from one of those. So there was a lot of different ways I could have gotten it. But they were
Sure.
starting a student organization, and I was like, well, this sounds fun. You know, it's not every day you can get to be on the ground floor starting something. And that was
Hmm.
how I got involved with them. And then I found out they could offer funding for me to stay in my research lab over the summer, and I could work there full time and not have to worry about getting a part time job because my the professor would only really had enough funding to do about 20 hours a week. So if I wanted anything more, I would have to work somewhere else. So they were able to actually, I think they covered most of it, if not all of it. So I could work full time, 40 hours, focus on research, work on a project. Actually, and this was the summer after my sophomore year. I got to work with, I don't know how, but there's a high school student. So they're going to be, I think, yeah, they're going to be a high school senior. They were in the lab just trying to learn about what research was. And there's also a freshman student. So I basically got to mentor them and teach them about research early on.
Oh,
I think
okay.
that might have been the foundation as far as
We're seeing it.
developing them. Yeah.
So it sounds like all these different things are coming from different angles.
Yeah,
There was never like a moment
yeah,
where it was just like, there it is.
yeah,
That's it. You're like, oh, it just so happened that. It just so happened that. And I think a lot of people do miss opportunities because they just don't take them, and
true.
they miss that other path because they just didn't see that opportunity right in front of their face. It's so funny you said research. What does that even mean? What does research mean to you? You can keep that as brief as you like.
Yeah, so research basically is trying to answer a question that people don't know the answer to. Briefly, that's what it is. So it doesn't have to necessarily be in science or engineering. It could be in music, could be in the arts, and that's really like what a PhD is that you are asking a question that no one has asked before. So, like anyone familiar with when anyone who
Mhm.
has their PhD is telling you what their PhD, it's very specific because
Very
they have
specific.
to answer something that's never been done before.
Very cool. Well, thank you for explaining that because I know there's so many people that they understand like, oh, get your doctors, get that PhD, defending your thesis,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't understand that this is something typically
Mhm.
it's usually so niche,
Yeah. It has
and
to
it's that you're even going to have to do your own the research on what is it like questioning people, questionnaires,
be.
surveys, and I'm sure that you've been through that. Although it doesn't sound like you got your PhD. Am I wrong?
Like,
Okay,
not yet.
not yet. Okay,
I
in the
haven't
works.
ruled
It
it
sounds.
out, but at least right now I'm focused on this stuff, but I haven't ruled it out yet.
The I'm sorry that I missed out on the leadership certification. What does that entail?
Oh, the Maxwell Leadership Certification? Yeah,
Hmm.
so for those people who are not familiar with John Maxwell, first off, I'll say how. But I understand if it's one of those things like if you haven't asked a question or thought about it, you might not know who John Maxwell is. But if you know anything about leadership, you probably should know who he is. One of the top leadership gurus in the world, been doing it over 50 years, over 70 books. And so Maxwell Leadership, or what John Maxwell team, he started it, I think, back in 2012. And really, he wanted to develop leaders. And this, he wants this to be his legacy as far as he's already done a lot in this world, but he realizes that what he always says is one is too small a number to achieve greatness.
Mm.
So he really wants to replicate leaders and multiply them so they can also multiply other leaders. So the whole thing, it's all online. It's on the platform where they have different courses and different calls and networks that you're able to learn more about um, the business side of things for speaking and coaching and also sales as well. They talk about like the mastermind techniques, the lunch and learns. They also talk about just the training as well. So you have access to John Maxwell's material. And once you go through the certification process, so he has these IMCs or international Maxwell certifications. They're in Florida twice a year, one in March, one in August. And so everyone comes on site, 3-day event, and then through that you get certified. You have to do a specific talk. We go through different coaching, and then you get your certification. And then really it's up to you. So you can stay in that lane and do just specifically Maxwell leadership stuff, and uh, whether it's the masterminds or lunch and learns, or you can just use it to develop yourself because it's great material. For
Mm.
myself, the reason I did it was that when I started Incredible Paul in 2020,
Good
April of
transition.
2020, yeah, uh, when I started it, I knew about Maxwell leadership, but I just hadn't thought about if that was the route I wanted to go. But as I was going through the business side and I knew I wanted to do stuff in leadership, I thought, what is a way to continue to develop other than going to the number one leadership expert in the world,
Yeah.
going being a part of his team, what he calls the legs to his legacy, with the Maxwell leadership team. and just continue to learn, because all the stuff that is on a platform is yours forever, and they're always adding different things. And so it's an opportunity to keep growing and developing, learn different methods of coaching, how to be a better coach, active listening, as well as the right questions to ask as well, and also learning between what is coaching versus counseling or even teaching. Because when people hear the word coach, and a lot of times I think it seems to be like we're oversaturated with coaches, but some of the people that say they're coaches are not really coaching. They're more consulting. And it's a difference. When you're consulting, you are doing things for someone. It's a service you're providing. When you're coaching, the power is in the coaching relationship itself. It's not anything I'm doing or you're doing. I'm just there to facilitate your growth and help hold you accountable. So it's through asking those thought-provoking questions and really deeply listening. Because I tell people this, like, when was the last time you really had a conversation with someone and they just listened to you for an hour, or let's say even 15 minutes, without them really saying anything or trying to interject their thoughts into what you were doing? And that's what coaching is. Like, there are some times that you can help guide the person, or you can ask to step in if you feel like they're going down a path that's not the right path. But for the most part, you really want to extract what's already in them, and that's the power of the coaching relationship.
Consulting versus coaching. You said, and
Yeah.
please expand if you can. The difference between coaching and consulting is that consultants are there for a task or mission. Coach is there to build a relation.
They take what's in you and
help you grow.
Out. They really take what's in you and bring it out. So, like, what example would be if I was you came to me for a consultant and you told me, hey, I want to do this. Maybe I want to create this design, or I want to create this project. You tell me what you want and I just go do it. Whereas when I'm coaching, I'm not the one doing the work. You're the one doing the work. I'm just helping you understand the work that you need to do and help hold you accountable for it. So at the end of the day, there really is no power with any individual coach. And I tell people this, it's really more so the compatibility, because people are different. Maybe you vibe a little bit better with someone else, but a good coach will tell you that it's not really them. They're extracting what's in you. And there are some times, like, depending on people's level of maturity or their level of growth, you do have to step into that more guidance or mentorship and give them some things that they need to do. But a lot of times we already know what we need to do, we're just not doing it.
Gotcha. Could I ask this?
Yeah.
I'm not calling anybody out.
Yeah.
Does it matter the age? You have to be a person of experience, or could you be like what you were helping, right? You helped somebody go from bachelor's, master's, PhD, never any actual experience, right? If you don't have the experience, could you still do or be a coach per se?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I would say, if you don't have experience, you need to understand the coaching method and model. That's first of all. So if you don't understand what coaching is and how to effectively coach, then not having the experience, that you really can't coach. But I would say, like, having specific experience in what the person is trying to do, you don't need it. Oftentimes, when you don't have it, it's easier, because when you have done something, there's a tendency for you to try and direct the person the way that you've done it or you want to do it. And so when you don't have that direct experience, you are really truly inquisitive, and then based on what they're sharing with you, you can better understand what are the best options. They're not best options, what are the possible options. And as they talk things out and talk about what the way forward is going to be or the potential obstacles, they can discover it on their own You're just really there to facilitate it. So I would say like not having experience, like understanding the coaching method and either the grow model to grower model. There's a lot of different models for coaching, and really doing it's a little bit more than active listening, because you really need to understand what the underlying things that people are saying, because in communication, about only 7% of what people are saying is the words that they're saying. Like 55% is the body language, and then 38% is the tone. So if you are not really in tune with understanding, this person is saying, I think things are all right, but as far as their tone or their body language, maybe their arms are crossed or they're looking away, that you can quickly see that things are not all right. Or even when they say something, you can tell if they're committed or non-committed. And when you sense them not committed, it's not necessarily that you're calling them out. You're simply asking a question. Is there anything that could be holding you back? Or what is something what are possible things that could be obstacles? So, and that's really comes from the experience. Not to say that I think some people have some natural gifting or talent, but what I tell people, I think I talked to, it was Neil I talked to on the podcast. He talked about this as far as having talent. So it was really good, and I totally agree with it. I think I've said it a couple of times too, as far as you can have talent, but just because you have talent doesn't mean you don't have to work hard. All that talent or gifting means is that when you put in the work, you're going to get more results than someone else that puts in that same amount of work.
Yeah.
So just because you have talent doesn't mean you don't have to do anything. If anything, it's you have more responsibility to put in more work, because you can go much higher and go much further.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's good. Is it for monetary purposes? Did you go into the coaching seeking it as a source of income, or was it just purely out of the passion, then you were going to use that to help with all your other sources as well?
Yeah, so I would say that's a good question. So it wasn't strictly for monetary services, and actually I'm trying to decide if I'm going to stick with coaching or switch to something else, because for me, like, really as an engineer, I don't have to do anything else to be good. Like, as an engineer, I make six figures, been like that for a couple of years. I could focus on that, grow that career, and everything would be fine for me. It's just that I get a lot of passion from helping people, and even like I think it's kind of like a common thing from when I was in high school and undergrad. And sometimes I ask myself, like, why am I doing it? I could just sit back and do nothing, or just go just work out all day, whatever it is. But when I don't do those things, connect with people, or try to add value, I just feel empty. So at least for me, I'm living. Yeah, I feel like I'm living out my purpose. Not to say that my purpose is only in coaching, or only in speaking, or only in podcasting. My purpose is really to make people the best versions of themselves. Because a lot of times,
so good.
A lot of times people have told me, and I think it's a gift that I have as far as encouragement. I don't know if it's because what people said to me and it just came out, but a lot of times I can see things in people that they don't always see in themselves. Maybe they saw it in themselves at some point and they don't see it anymore. So I like to draw that stuff out, and it's just really exciting to me when someone who didn't think they could achieve something, or when they've been working for months to get a new job, and then so like I even do stuff with resumes and careers stuff as well, just because of the transitions I've had and all the stuff I've learned. So like the people that are struggling for months, like a year, to find a job, and then they reach out to me, and then with a couple months, usually they're able to find something that they like. And not to say that I don't think I was really that special. I think it's just that I was able to take the time to understand where they're at and the kind of the gaps to fill in those gaps. And a lot of times I don't even charge for it. I need to be better at this. I don't charge for my services. But when
I thought it was one of your I thought you had all those other things as like as a source. So you're trying to say it's almost like a hobby kind of gig.
Yeah,
Here and there I'll charge, but not really. So give me a second here. I
yeah,
want to pull some of this back.
yeah.
Who told you that you could do more? And this is exactly the reason for this podcast. You just said exactly the one thing that I'm trying to get out of every single person that comes on here. You said, I have a job. I could just continue to do this and I will be just fine. Where in it is it somebody that you look up to? Is it a was how'd you do that? Like what made you go, I can do more and so I will
Mm,
do more?
yeah,
Like I think there's always something in somebody that just that pushes you to do more, even though you are just fine.
yeah. That's a good question. I think it's a few people. The person that jumps out to mind, I think, at least in college, would be my mentor, Brian Thomas. So shout out to Brian if he's able to listen to this. So while I was in college, the summer after I did the stuff like with LSAM doing research, I went to a conference and it was in Chicago, yeah, Chicago that time, and it was for all these other research people in the same program, but kind of across the Midwest. And so he had what he called the read it theory to success. So I think I'm gonna butcher, but I think it's like resume, education, attitude, determination, and the it factor. And so I really resonated with him as far as his background because he worked full time and he was doing this as well. And I think that was for the first time I saw someone that looked like me, had a similar background. With he was also a LSAM student down in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So he just shared his story, what he was doing, and he had just so much passion, and so much so that I was able to convince the leadership for my program to get him to come to our conference the following year. And so he was always pushing me to do a little bit more. I would ask questions like, "Why don't you do this?" or "Why don't you do that?" And so he was always pushing me to do a little bit more. But
Did you seek him out, or
did seek him out.
was it just one of those alignment things?
I did seek him out. So I think that was one thing that I don't know why, because it's not something well, I guess I was sophomore in college, so I don't think I had that many experiences going to conference and a speaker that really stuck out to me. But I reached out to him. I said that your talk was really inspiring. I would love for you to come to my university. And then he challenged me. He said, talk to the people over your program and tell them what you felt and get me there if you want me there. And so I did.
Whoa. Okay. Get them to was it like get them to ask me, or was it
Yeah, basically.
what would that look like? Okay.
Yeah,
How
so
many emails did they had to send?
it wasn't that many email. So I think because I already knew like the key players because I was a part of the people who are helping create the student organization, which is pretty new. I launched that fall. So I knew all of them already. And I think I was adding value, and they just knew I was someone that was really interested and passionate about the program, even though I was really new. And so, and I think, so when I did hear that there are other people who had also mentioned it as well. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it was Paul Faronbi reached out and then they said yes, we'll do it because Paul said it. I don't think that's why. I think I was along with the other group of people that had reached out and said his session was amazing to try and get him to come back, and maybe he had reached out or talked to them as well. All I know is that after he left, I reached out, and then when their conference, so that was in I think October of 2014, and then by the time when we had our conference in the spring of 2015, he was at our conference, like in February.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So you reached out. You had somebody that was not even close to They're literally. And you felt inspired enough that you wanted that person to be with you to inspire others. And so you made that next move.
Yeah.
You took a leap of faith on
Yeah.
in its
Yeah.
essence, really.
Basically.
Man, that's big. That's
Yeah.
big. And I don't think that everybody has that. I don't believe that everybody has that drive to take the next thing. With entrepreneurs, that's why I want to get a lot of entrepreneurs on here, or just higher level people, is because there's just something different. There's that I'm good, but man, there could be more.
Yeah.
There could be more. Like, oh, it's cool making one or two resumes, but what if I do this podcast? What if I talk to 50 people at one time? How many more lives can I change? What if I
Yeah.
start a nonprofit and I have a job and I have a podcast and I do you see why this is why I brought you on?
Yeah.
Because there's obviously something different that sets you apart from most people that want to meet the status quo.
Yeah. I
Like
guess that's true.
always hit average and just be okay with that. What do you think? What do you think about that? Do you believe that average is okay?
I think that there's really no such thing as average because a
Mm,
lot of times people that say they're average are below average. Because if you think about it, no one ever says that they're below average. But, and this is just the mathematician or engineer in me, how averages work is that some people are above and there's some people that are below. There's really very few people that are actually at that average mark. And so,
are you doing standard deviations right now?
not
Well,
yet. Well,
one, you lost everybody that says I hate math and science. Two, you just called every single person. We're gonna get two views.
only half the people, only half below average. And I'm not even going to say I would say I'm above average, but I'm not going to say I'm like well above average or like three standard deviations or go into that stuff.
Mhm.
But I think there's this.
Do you aspire to be? Do you aspire to be that 0.5%?
Yeah. I mean, it's not
Mm.
like something that I honestly, because it's really easy to get caught up with comparing yourself to others. But at least for my faith, I know that God has a purpose for me that only I can do. And if I don't do it, there are people that are not going to be impacted, or things are not going to
Mm.
get done. Or actually, there might be things that get done, but I'm not going to reap the blessing that God has already set out for me because I didn't step out and do what I was supposed to do. So I have to do my part. And so even what you were saying, like even the boldness to reach out to Brian and do this, if you ask anyone that knew me, like when I lived in St. Louis before 15, before I moved to Omaha, they would not in 1,000 years, million years guess that I would be the person I am today. I was painfully shy. So shy.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't.
Yes, painfully. I say painfully
High school or college?
more so right before high school. Like my
Okay.
freshman year, I was still pretty shy. I was starting to I think, get out of my shell a little bit. But like growing up, like in elementary school, painfully shy because I say painfully because I would, instead of speaking up for myself when something was wrong or needed to be said, I would just take it and cause myself
Mm.
pain because I didn't want to disrupt anything or disrupt the status quo. So that's why I say painfully. I know there's a lot of people that could probably relate to that. And so, really, I think in elementary
Yeah.
school and even up to middle school, it was not intentional. I did have to like step out, like do more stuff, like either it's doing different projects or being on sports teams. Like when I'm in a relaxed environment, I know people, I can be myself. I think you ask anyone that's an introvert or is shy,
Mhm.
if they're in a relaxed environment, you can see them talking, all that stuff. I would say the transition happened when I moved to Omaha, Nebraska, after being in St. Louis
Oh,
the
wow.
last 11 years. Just think about this, that grew up 11 years, knew everyone, moved to brand new school, brand new location, don't know anyone. And so at the beginning, I was pretty shy, but then I realized I am going to have, I'm going to be alone forever or not have anyway. Because, like, there's really, I think it's different if you're like a freshman, because everyone comes in as a freshman and they come from different middle schools and kind of intermingle. By
Yeah.
after freshman year into sophomore year, people already have their like friend groups developed they over the summer and all that stuff. So I'm coming in disrupting all that stuff. And so I think because of that, I had like multiple friend groups. Like if you ask anyone from high school, it'll say like Paul's the person that really got along with everyone. I didn't have like a pre-designed friend group. Whether it's like the baseball players or the football players, like I pretty much got along with everyone.
Mm.
And that was just because I was more intentional. I wasn't the person that would go out and talk to people, but maybe I would.
Were you? I'm sorry to
Yeah,
help
go ahead.
out. Were you one of the minorities?
I
Were you a
was.
small minority in Omaha, Nebraska?
Yeah, I would say there.
You just said, and the first thing you said was baseball. That really threw me off because I know the demographic
Yeah, yeah. I
of
played
baseball.
baseball. Yeah, so I was.
Did you play
I
baseball?
did play baseball. Yes.
Is, were you in shape? Were you in shape in high school like you are now? It's
Like I am now, no, because I didn't even touch a weight until I was 15. So
okay.
like
Same
Omaha
here, I
was,
think.
yeah, Omaha was when I started lifting. But then I think it was just like with puberty and everything, I got pretty big pretty fast. Um, like it was a running joke with people because just for some context, freshman year of high school, I was probably 130 pounds. By the time I got to sophomore year in Omaha, I was like 140. Started lifting with the baseball team, which for whatever reason, the baseball team lifted with the football team track. And so we did a lot more stuff than like typical baseball players did. So at the
Mhm.
end of sophomore year, I was 160. By the end of junior year, I was 180. Or I think, yeah, actually, I could probably got up to like 185. By senior year, I got up to like 215. That was going from about, it was like 5'7",
Dang.
140s uh, sophomore year to like 6'4", 215. So I like grew a ton and bulked up a ton as well.
Wow. You were definitely hitting some dingers for sure then. That is crazy. And before I let you go, I want to hit this little bitty bit here. The Do you think that a lot of your now success comes through the dedication that you have for your own personal health? Um, did that help you with everything when you went to college? Is it easier to come to you because you're a taller guy?
uh, I would like to think no. I mean, it may help. If anything, I think it's very easy for people to be intimidated by me. Just for one, I'm black. I'm 6'4". So
Mhm.
like just first looking at me, you're like, I don't know what this guy's up to type of thing. But I think I'm just being
I
honest.
never completely different thought in my head.
Yeah, I'm just
You had a smile on your face. The countenance was different.
yeah, yeah. But I
So
think once
I think
when
it's
people
yeah.
see the
Go ahead.
smile, that is what brings people in. But if like you just come
Mm.
across me and maybe I'm not paying attention, I mean usually I'm smiling, but a lot of like if I'm not smiling, which is not that often, I I've been told I look pretty intimidating.
I feel like I had the opposite. Whenever I got out of high school, heck, soaking wet 125, 130, and there was very little respect or just coming up to there was no intimidation. Whenever I put on a lot more weight and I actually started working out and got dedicated to that, I actually felt like people were more gravitated towards
Oh,
me as a person and wanting to get to know me more. Um, and I think that actually goes for most people that work out. Like they're like, oh, that person must know something. Like if you
Yeah,
think about it,
no, that's fair.
uh, people that go to the gym, they're more dedicated. They must know something about eating. They must have played a sport or whatever.
Yeah, it's that
There's
discipline.
dedication. I see it as this person could do something hard.
Yeah.
They're willing to do the hard thing to get those results. And so that's kind of, I was hoping that you might say that. You're like, no. So it's interesting that you think that way, and that's quite all
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it really
Quite all
just
right.
depends. Like a lot of times, like people randomly tell me like they really love my smile, and I think that's what brings people in. But I did wasn't
Yep.
always even like growing up. I used to frown a lot, and my mom was like, "Don't frown." Like it's not good. Like you have a great smile. I guess I've always had a great smile, but I did not have the best attitude when I was really young. And I learned to smile more like in my elementary school years, and it just stuck with me.
That's awesome. Well, I would definitely want to honor your time. I told you now we're right at like 50-ish minutes. Kind of to end it off here. If you could do, because you do a lot. You do a lot. You do a lot. And I know there's a lot of people out there that get a lot from you. To end it, just kind of end us off here with what do you, I'm trying to say it now. I want to think how to phrase this. If you could tell somebody one thing that you've never told anybody else that could help them be set apart and add value,
That I
what would it be?
that I never told anyone else.
You've never told anybody else.
I don't think I could think of something I've never told anyone else. I think it really just depends on the situation. So you're talking about help set them apart or add value to them. So it's not something. Honestly, I can't think of something that I haven't said before because I really am intentional about affirmations and what I'm saying to myself. And I tell people the same thing. And so, like, I could it'd be easy, really easy to say like words matter, but I'm gonna say something I tell everyone is that you do belong and you do matter. So
Mm.
imposter syndrome is something I talk about a lot because some people have heard of it, a lot of people haven't, but everyone has experienced it. Whether you are at the top of your field or you're just starting, it's this idea of really being an imposter and feeling like you don't belong. Whether it's you see other people doing stuff better or feeling like you're like even coming down to the school aspect that you feel like everyone's struggling with this topic and everyone's not struggling with this topic and you are, and there's tendency to like shrink back into yourself. So I really stress the importance of having community, and that's why a lot of the stuff I do, I try to build community because I know the power of having community and really the power of defining an issue. Because when you don't define if you when you don't define something, then it's impossible to resolve it. So I just really stress on the fact that you do belong and you do matter, and that's something you need to repeat to yourself until you believe
All right. I don't think we can do any better way than that. No negative self-talk.
it. Yes,
Have a goal or you miss the goal every time.
very true.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Paul, and I appreciate you coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.